If you live or work in Europe, you know that electricity costs have gone through the roof. A recent paper by McKinsey discusses why, and it goes far beyond the war in Ukraine. John Ozer summarized McKinsey's paper in the article, The Power Crisis in Europe, What Data Centers Need to Know. The bottom line, buckle up, Europe is not getting better anytime soon. If you haven't been thinking about steps your organization should take to reduce power consumption and carbon emission, now is the time. Hi, John, I have a question for you.
What's that?
Obviously, it is hard not to notice European energy crisis, and blaming Russia-Ukraine war is the most obvious train of thoughts. But war or no war, McKinsey's article warns that we shall buckle up until at least 2027. It's not just the war. There are additional contributing factors and they can be acted upon right away. Can you pinpoint what they are?
There's a phrase that we say that no good deed goes unpunished. And the good deed that Europe was doing was they were trying to make the transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy sources. And because they were in this transition, they were really sensitive to the shockwave that started with the Russian war. It wasn't just the Russian war, though. There were a couple other factors at play. Number one, because of the drought, which came from global warming, hydroelectric plants were down, I think, 14%, which McKinsey pointed out. In addition, France had to shut for repair, I think it was 34 out of 56 nuclear power plants that really also dropped the power going into Europe. So the whole thing was caused by this transition that Europe is trying to make that's obviously great for both Europe and the world as a whole. But there were other contributing factors, as you point out, besides the war in Ukraine.
The game with the energy sources resembles the cloud and on-premise hybrid. McKinsey's article identifies energy sources as intermittent and dispatchable. Ideally, the latter shall only be turned on to meet peak requirements. Can you elaborate on that idea?
It's a fascinating idea, and we alluded to it a moment ago when we talked about hydroelectric being down because of the drought. So, if the sun doesn't shine for 5 days in a row, all of a sudden solar power goes down. It's not like people aren't going to want to, make their daiquiris or cook their eggs because the sun doesn't shine. So you need to fill in for those renewable sources. And you can do that in a couple of ways. One is you can have cleaner sources that you can kick up, like maybe hydrogen power, which is still under development, or you can store the power, which is hard to do, and those facilities aren't in place either. So one of the points that McKinsey makes is that building the infrastructure is both going to take time and take money, and the economy is tight. I mean, supply chains are tight. Looking for talent to help these construction efforts is tight, and for that reason, these issues aren't going to be resolved until, as you said, 2027.
Overall, McKinsey's article paints a pretty depressing vision, even though if you read into the steps that Europe started to undertake long before the war, they are all the right ones. The European policymakers and stakeholders are already working to address the issues and find solutions to ensure a stable and affordable energy system for consumers and businesses now and in the future. The focus is on Europe right now. But shouldn't the European approach be copied globally?
Without question. And but that's not something Europe can drive. Really, what the article says, and the reason that we cited it in the article that we wrote, is that if you're a European power center or a European operator, this problem is not going to go away. So you need to respond to it. And one of the ways you can respond to it is by lowering the cost of your encoding. Now, I think what Europe is doing with the switch to renewable energy sources is wonderful. And I think you should duplicate that around the world to the extent you could. But Europe, rightfully so, needs to be concerned with their own problems. And that's what we're addressing in our article.
Right now, video engineers are being asked, or rather mandated, to achieve what seems quite impossible: to reduce power consumption to save OPEX, reduce carbon footprint to ensure ESG metrics are hit by the company, all while minimizing the potential disruption of energy instability. What steps the organization could be taking to reduce power consumption and carbon emissions?
I mean, there's a number of steps that you can take, but the one that's most relevant to us, the one that we can contribute to, is switching from older transcoding technologies like CPU-based transcoding technologies to ASIC-based technologies. And the advantages of ASICs are you get much greater density at much lower CapEx costs. More importantly, in the context of this conversation, is your power consumption, can drop by as much as 95 to even higher percentage. So just making the switch from a CPU-based transcoding to ASIC-based transcoding is really going to drop your power costs significantly. As the power costs drive higher, it means the payback period on your investment in ASIC-based transcoding is going to drop significantly. Even if we've got a calculator up on our website, and we're seeing some calculations where you can recoup the cost of the new technology in between 3 to 6 months.